Today on Riffs, Beards, and Gear, we talk about what's going on over at Jackson Guitars. So recently, Jackson has released a series of new Soloist guitars as part of a USA production run. And this has been significant because this is the first time that has happened since basically the 90s, right? So up until last year, when the first Soloist reissue came out, you could only get a Soloist in a really inexpensive import version or a custom shop version. There was really no in between. So people were understandably very excited that the Soloist guitar was back in the USA production line. I saw a lot of people in my original video upset about, the Floyd Rose and the lack of binding on the neck, etc., etc. However, we're not here to talk about that. I thought I would take this opportunity to show you the new Soloist, the hardtail Soloist, but moreover, kind of talk about my perspective of what is happening over at Jackson now versus how it's traditionally been most of my guitar playing life. And before we go any further, Jackson sent me this new SL2MG HT American Series Soloist. I'm not being paid to make this video. In fact, I wasn't actually even asked to make a video about this guitar. However, they did send this to me, presumably for something. However, all thoughts and opinions are still mine. So I started playing in the summer of 1994. Now, before you say I'm old in the comments, I am in fact old. And in the summer of 1994, my first exposure to Jackson was still to this day, my dear friend, Mark Allen. He was really into Megadeth, and he was really into much more heavier bands than I was at the time. I was very much a, Alice in Chains, Nirvana, Soundgarden, Stone Temple Pilots grunge kid, and Mark was a metalhead. And I walked into my 8th grade history class, and he had one of the free catalogs that you used to get at all the guitar stores, right? So in order to know about the new guitar lines, you would go to a guitar store, a physical guitar store, and you would get a print catalog that was for free from each of the manufacturers. And this was great reading material and would provide you things to cut out and tape to your binder at school. Mark had what must have been the 94, 95 catalog for Jackson guitars, and he had it open, and I saw it walking by the table. And I didn't know Mark at this time, but this is how we met. And I saw the catalog, and I thought, Jackson guitars, look at those funny looking headstocks. They're so sharp, you're going to kill somebody. Now, of course, Jackson Guitars was started in the 70s. The first and most notable player, I would argue, and I don't think anyone else would argue, is Randy Rhoads, of course. However, most of the 80s, Jacksons were really, that metal guitar brand that you would see everywhere. In all the music videos, you would see the distinctive styling. You would see, the Soloist, the dinky bodies, and you saw them into the 90s. And then the tides kind of shifted when I started playing guitar. So suddenly it was about vintage used Fenders, Jags and Jazz Masters, and Gibson Les Pauls were coming back into fashion again. And anything that had a Floyd Rose was suddenly super, super uncool. And this was an interesting time for Jackson because they kind of tried to pivot with mixed reaction. Although I do think they had some really, really cool stuff in the 90s. So another really prolific and high profile and popular artist for Jackson through most of their history, I would say, has been Scott Ian from Anthrax. I'm a huge Scott Ian fan, and he went from having a New York Yankees logo inlaid not guitar that was missing all of the frets above the 12th fret because he didn't play solo, so he didn't need those frets, which was amazing. He went from that to playing, a Les Paul Jr. style double cutaway JJ1 signature model, and you also had guitars like the Jackson Outcaster and the Jackson Surfcaster. And actually, these guitars were really, really sick. And I don't think they get enough credit. Well, they're starting to, but we'll get to that in just a second. But at the time, no one seemed to care about the Surfcaster and Outcaster guitars in particular. I was a huge fan of them, and I always wanted one. Now, fast forward to 2002, and Jackson is purchased by Fender Guitars, and I think that was a really, really great decision, and ultimately really, really good for the Jackson guitar brand, and one of the first people in my world that I ever saw play a Jackson guitar that wasn't, this crazy metal shredder. Well, he's a shredder, but he wasn't a metal guy. He wasn't in a metal band. I guess Jake is a metal guy, was Jake Kiley from Strung Out. He had a whole bunch of really amazing Jacksons, but the one that really sticks out for me is the Live in a Dive guitar that I think he still plays to this day. He was the first guy that was really used Jackson in a non-traditional 80s heavy metal setting. He was doing the more fast, heavy punk rock thing with Strung Out, and it really made me see Jackson in a whole new light. Now, for the next 20 years or so, from my perspective, you really saw Jackson being used still primarily in the extreme metal world, and real heavy bands and uh lead players really loved Jackson. Of course, there's always Marty Friedman back in the 90s, but you'd see less of the Kelly shaped guitars, for example, and you'd see much more of the Soloist and dinky style players, and you would see the Warrior stuff. And but again, we're talking about really heavy music, and that seems to have really changed in the last couple of years. Now, when I say heavy music, I mean like the thrashy, traditional metal, deathcore stuff. Although my dear friend Pat from Fit for an Autopsy is currently a Jackson artist with great success, and his tone has never been better, and he's never looked better with any of his guitars than he does with Jackson. However, now you are seeing Jackson in the hands of players, that are in Sleep Token. And my friend Mike Stringer from Spirit Box has two custom shop Surfcasters from Jackson. We also have Lee Malia from Bring Me the Horizon having the same Surfcaster style body shape in a 6-string format, as well as various Jackson solo style guitars. And then you also have Kevin Scaff from A Day to Remember playing Jackson soloists as well. And when I see those photos, I think, what a time. What a time. Now, I'd be remiss if I didn't tell you a little bit about this American Series Soloist SL2MG HT guitar in a matte green finish. This has a 25.5-inch scale, an ebony fretboard, 12 to 16-inch compound radius, Goto locking tuners, a hip shot fixed bridge. This is the first, to my knowledge, fixed bridge Soloist in a USA setting. This is amazing. This is the kind of guitar that I can get excited about. EMG 81 in the bridge, EMG 85 in the neck, non-bound neck. This thing is amazing. Now, one of my my Jackson nerd friends said this guitar looks slightly weird without a truss rod cover on the headstock. I could see that. However, it doesn't really bother me because I'm not looking at this guitar as a traditional Jackson fan. And I think that's exactly the point from Jackson's point of view, right? This is an incredible guitar. It feels good. It sounds good. And I love the fact that, guitars like these are what's in, being played by, Turnstile, as an example, one of the hottest bands on the planet right now. I just love seeing Jackson in the hands of non-traditional metal players. And I'm here for it, and I love it. And yeah, this new hardtail soloist, I also love. Very, very cool guitar. It's been a joy to play in the last couple of weeks that I've had it. And if you would like to know more about this guitar, I will link down below in the description. And while you're down there, please consider clicking the subscribe button to further support this channel. And with that, you've been wonderful. I've been Fluff. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time.